I'm going to talk about the Hothouse programme, which we're currently this year partnering with the new Ashgate Gallery, Making Space and the Craft Study Centre on a cohort in Farnham. And UCA Careers and UCA have also been incredibly supportive of the programme. But before I talk about what we offer to new makers, I'm just going to put the Crafts Council and a little bit about the craft sector in context. So for those of you who don't know who we are and what we do, or perhaps only familiar with the parts and not the whole, I'll give it a bit of an overview. So the Crafts Council is the National Development Agency for Contemporary Craft in the UK. And what that means is that we very much aim to act as a lead for the sector and to sort of join the dots up between all of the craft organisations and providers and really sort of lead in the field. So we have a number of aims as an organisation, obviously, and we sort of capture those broadly as make, see, collect and learn, and I'll go a little bit into how we deliver on those different areas in a moment. So our aims are really about building a strong infrastructure and economy for contemporary craft in the UK, and we do that by growing the market for the sale of contemporary craft to collectors, museums, businesses, as well as the general public. We champion high quality contemporary craft both nationally and internationally, and I'll give you a few examples of the international shortly. And we also work to increase and diversify the audience for contemporary craft to as wide an audience as possible. Importantly, we've always nurtured and supported makers and craft professionals throughout their careers. The Crafts Council has existed since 1971, and so there's always been a support scheme, a startup scheme for emerging makers, so it's very much part of the Crafts Council's DNA, if you like. We promote teaching and learning of craft in schools, and we also identify the needs of the sector through in-depth research, and quite often that research informs the different areas that I'm sort of referring to, as you'll see. And all of the images through the presentation are all makers who've been supported by the Crafts Council in one way or another over the years. So on the right there is some work by Samantha Bryan, who's recently been on our injection programme for established makers. So we offer support and promotion through professional development, and that's professional development not just for makers actually, but also for craft curators. We offer market development opportunities, research and evaluation, exhibitions and collection development, which we very often do in partnership. We do a lot of our work in partnership, as you'll be picking up already. And also a web and print presence. We're about to relaunch our website in the coming, well, these things are always a bit of a movable feast, aren't they? But very, very soon anyway. And that's going to be much more editorially led, so there'll be lots of interesting case studies and material there to sort of increase your familiarity with the craft world. And our print presence is that we share a building with Crafts magazines, so they very much sit alongside us. So we work with makers in a broad range of disciplines, and I think when things are most interesting often is where these materials are perhaps not exclusive and perhaps kind of come together in some way, and that keeps things very exciting. We see a lot of fresh work coming out of that kind of experimentation and pushing the boundaries forward. So make, see, collect and learn. So our collections and exhibitions team work in partnership with museums and galleries around the country, and we not only generate our own exhibitions and curate our own exhibitions, but work with guest curators and in partnership with those venues to develop exhibitions. And two of our recent ones, which are on tour at the moment around the country, are Sound Matters, which is exploring the quality of sound that you can achieve through objects and material, and also added value, which is an exploration of quality and craftsmanship. And that was launched at Design Junction during the London Design Festival last year. We have an active collection. Again, that's a core part of the Crafts Council, and the collection has got acquisitions from the last 40 years, and some recent ones are pictured there. But we have an active acquisitions panel who are out and about and identifying where sort of contemporary practice is going, and who are the individuals who are really sort of working in an exciting way, and what are those key pieces that we need to sort of represent that direction in our collection. The collection also forms a really core part of the exhibitions programme, and so quite often we'll work with guest curators who are perhaps selecting and interpreting from our existing collection. Our Collect strand, which also includes our exhibition Collect, which I'll talk about in a moment. So we develop routes to market for makers, and we're very active in developing the collectors market, as well as building the Crafts Council collection, as I mentioned. So we have Collect at the Ashgate Gallery coming up from the 9th to the 12th of May. And if you haven't visited before, it's really, really worth a visit. It's a huge show of 32 galleries from the UK and abroad, and it's a really rare chance to see international work by the top sort of selected makers of each of those galleries. So it is a gallery fair, and the makers who are represented there are being represented by their gallery. So it's all about their relationship with their gallery and then the gallery taking there. So we're supporting the galleries, if you like. As part of Collect, we also have a project space, which is a sort of celebration of experimentation and risk-taking work. And that goes out by an open application each year. And we have had some new graduates who have had the opportunity to showcase their work there. If they come up with a really fantastic proposal, they're very much considered on a level with some of the established names. And so that's another kind of core part of the show as well. We have also worked with doing its own thing with the Art Fund at Collect, and the Art Fund has, working in partnership with them, has enabled a number of museums and galleries around the country to make significant purchases of contemporary craft for their own collections. So this is an example of a piece that was purchased by Billmeir in Middlesbrough a few years ago. Our Learn strands, so promoting craft education and increasingly skills progression, and our attention is very much focused at the moment on what the potential of apprenticeships within craft practice may be in the future. But we work with teachers and schools to help them to teach craft. We provide information and resources, teachers' packs. We have a craft action network which is designed for teachers, and we deliver national participation and learning projects. So two examples of that are our craft club, and that's very much a sort of entry route into making for young people who've not had the opportunity to more to get sort of making and their hands-on materials before. And that now has 400 clubs rolled out around the country, and it's delivered with the UK Hand Knitters Association and the Women's Institute. And the idea is that people with knit skills are trained up to be able to pass those skills on to young people, so that they there's a next generation of knitters in the first instance. That's been our kind of focus area at the start of this project, and looking in the future at sort of diversifying into other kind of accessible areas of craft that people can get started with. And then secondly, our Firing Up scheme, which was run over 3 years, and that very much, I don't know about you, but certainly when I was, I remember when I was at school, there was a very underused kiln in the art room that nobody really sort of had very many skills to use. No one really knew how to sort of get good results out of it, and it was a bit sort of old and clunky. And so Firing Up sort of recognised that that kind of set of circumstances, if you like. And so a project was created from that premise, that starting with a kiln rehab. So those kilns were kind of loved and refurbished and got up and running. And then in partnership with local higher education institutions and ceramic makers, the teachers could come along to professional development sessions to increase their own skills and knowledge in working in ceramics. And so there's a photo there of some very proud new kiln owners in a school there, and there's been some fantastic work that the children and young people have made out of that project. We also have a handling collection, which is a sort of subsidiary to our main collection, and we offer a curated loan object box, and it allows for interpretation of craft objects, craft techniques, craft materials to schools and to cultural venues, and allows children to respond in their own imaginative way to those materials and objects. But they're all objects that are acquired from well-known and established makers. And we also undertake research and provide information on craft. As I said, we publish Craft magazine, we promote critical debate, and we advocate for craft to government. And we do that through a number of reports, some of which we commission, some of which we work with other bodies on. So I just thought I'd run through a few findings from one of our recent reports to give you a sense of the kind of sector and industry that you're entering into. So findings from our report for Craft in an Age of Change, which was published in 2012, and you can find it on our website in our research area if you'd like to read more. It found that 88% of makers are predominantly sole traders, so sort of segueing from Alison's talk, and I'm sure lots of information about how to set up as a sole trader, it's very much the norm within the sector. There's very much a growth in portfolio working, that is sort of perhaps exploring a number of different strands to your business, and in fact the conversation just before I started the talk about how makers might produce their own one-off objects, but they might also collaborate with industry to create production ones, whilst also perhaps doing teaching or consultancy, or essentially a kind of portfolio of different activities that make up their career. So that's very much becoming the norm as well within craft practice. Obviously the relationship between the digital and material worlds is proliferating, and makers having access to different ways of making digitally, as well as obviously expanding their market through social media. And through that there's also a relationship with science and technology that can be explored. As well as craft in community settings, and I know that Lynn's talk I think is coming up, Lynn Dick from Making Space, and that will very much pick up on some of those themes. Or have you been already, Lynn? No, you're later. Yeah. Within that, we're in a context of some changes within education, and perhaps what the access to taking on a craft degree perhaps might be, and ensuring that craft is taught in schools to create the next generation of makers. But craft is very much a buzzword at the moment, and there's a growth in what's known as the experience economy. So people more interested in the story behind the object, its provenance, who made it, how it was made, and I don't know if any of you saw the Kettle Chips advert before, I think it's before Christmas, where a group of makers sort of came together and they built a table and all the plates and glasses that went on the table, and the tablecloth to go on the table within a day. And so you see these brands kind of borrowing, if you like, from craft to lend their product sort of authenticity. And that also happening within the sort of luxury goods market. So potential for craftspeople to sort of position themselves as a kind of luxury goods offer, as luxury brands very much talk about the provenance and quality and handmade quality of their product. So Craft and Age of Change found that there was over 23,000 makers working in the UK, many a second career. Many are using digital technology, as I say, to produce their work as well as promote it. 61% have degrees, but there's also a strong contingent of makers who are coming through other training routes and don't have craft-related qualifications. But a high percentage, in terms of the national average, are dyslexic, and there's an average annual turnover of 20,000 per annum. That figure's interesting because actually there are some very, very high turnover craft businesses. Alison picked up on the VAT question, and so you do really kind of get both ends of the spectrum, because there are also many makers who are working very much part-time and perhaps just running a practice a couple of days a week. 30% of makers currently export their work, and that's a growing market, and there's an estimated total income for makers in the sector of 457 million. And at the other end of that, 40% of adults in England have purchased a craft object, and 5.6 million craft pieces are purchased each year by people living just in England. So conservative estimate of the total value of those sales is 913 million, which is about, I believe, equivalent to West End theatre ticket sales. So sort of industry that the UK is quite known for. So it's sort of getting craft really recognised as being a key contributor to the economy. And 97% of currently active craft buyers are very much interested in contemporary craft. Their reasons for this are craft makes a unique gift, they admire the human skill that's involved or want to keep craft skills alive, owning something that nobody else does, supporting craft makers or new talent, or they're drawn behind the story behind the object. And so in terms of sort of setting out as a maker and really establishing your profile, you are your own brand, and that's what people are very much interested in. So I'm going to talk now about Crafts Council Collective, which, if you like, is the make strand of what we do in terms of supporting makers. Collective was launched in 2009, and it includes three programme strands which are overpinned by collective events, and I'll mention those at the end. So obviously the most relevant to you all as emerging makers, as rising stars, is our Hothouse programme, as I say, that we're working with Craft Study Centre, New Ashgate Gallery, and Making Space on this year. So it's a national scheme providing talented makers with support for 6 months of the year. And we very much value placing business skills on an equal footing with creative development, so that's very much the ethos of the programme. The idea is that it's a safe place for emerging makers to test directions, to test out where they want to place their product in the market and how they want to work. Obviously, the fantastic partners that we work with allow access to that kind of broader network, not just the Crafts Council. And we very much work in a model which brings in kind of established and successful practitioners and profiles their career routes. So it's a kind of real experience in that way. And importantly, talking about the kind of way that we sort of advocate for craft, we really want to develop ambassadors from those new makers to be able to talk about the value of what they do and the value of the craft sector. So this year, where are we? Just over the midway point for this year's cohorts, and we're running 4 around the country. And so we work with quite a number of partners each year, and the idea is that it provides sort of regional access. Wherever you're based in the country, more or less, you should be able to travel to take part a couple of times a month, which is about the frequency that it runs. So Hothouse South West, Hothouse North, and Hothouse Midlands, in addition to this South East hub. And the programme includes core sessions, so everyone has sort of more or less a sort of concurrent experience, albeit that the content is then tailored to those individuals in their cohorts of 10. So we support around 40 makers a year. And the programme is very much designed to be sequential, so each session builds on the information that you've received on the last and lays the foundation for the next session. And it really sort of covers some of the key areas that you need to engage with as an emerging practitioner. And we also run 3 cross-cohort days as part of the programme as well. So at the beginning, middle and end, all 40 participants in the kind of national cohort come together to network together. And I'll explain some of the images. This was an image from the reflection day at the Goldsmith Centre for Hothouse 2. And in the middle, I'll explain that image because it's quite a fun activity. We did a sort of skill swap networking event where you had to kind of write down half a dozen things that you were really good at. Great at Twitter, got that sorted out. Prolific, frequent. And then things that you weren't so good at, so someone else might have said, hopeless at Twitter, hate the idea of social media, where do I start? And the idea was that people sort of bartered their skills. This is Lucy Folkes in the middle there, who's a ceramicist, and she decided to wear hers as a sandwich board, which I rather liked. And then in addition, each participant has 5 hours with a mentor and 10 hours with a peer buddy. So a peer buddy is someone who's just maybe 1 or 2 years ahead in practice, and a mentor is someone who's perhaps running an established practice or is another sort of expert within the sector in some of the ways, so perhaps a curator or someone like Alison or someone like Uti. So Amelia Fever was a textile maker who'd graduated from Arts University in Bournemouth, and she took part in Hothouse 2, and her buddy was Barbara Keel, who was a couple of years ahead of her, and her mentor was the embroiderer Karen Nichol. So in 2015, there were up to 40 places available. You must be within 2 years of graduation or setting up, so you might not have started up straight out of university or college if that's the route that you've gone down. You might have gone and worked in Tesco's for a year to pay off your student overdraft before thinking about sort of setting up your jewellery practice, for example. And we very much take that into consideration because not everybody's ready to start up straight off after graduation. You need to have the intention of making craft business your main activity, albeit that might be part of that portfolio career that I described, and obviously working within a contemporary craft discipline. And although the programme is maybe about sort of 2 days a month, you have to be working actively on your business and your practice in between, so you need to be able to commit fully for that period of time. And excitingly, next year will be the first time that we're going to make 6 places available to makers based in Scotland. So the call for applications will go out around June time, and the selection will take place in the autumn, and we're very much hoping to be able to work in the South East again for some repeat partnerships, so do look out for that sort of via the New Ashgate network as well as the Crafts Council. And application is via a set form, so really starting to kind of think about how you want to present yourself and talk about what your goals and ambitions are and what you make and why you want to do the programme. We ask for 6 images of recent work, and we very much like to see some progression, so perhaps if you have studied and you are a recent graduate, some work that's been self-initiated outside of that learning environment. Applicants are then shortlisted by all of the partners, as well as an established practitioner coming in as a guest selector, and also we very much value our past participants of the programme, and so they take part in the selection as well, because after all, they've done the programme, they know it as well as we do. So we invite around 60 makers to interview with their work, and out of that, 40 places are then allocated. And we get about double that in terms of applications, about 120. So that's the Hothouse programme, and then just briefly I'll mention the other programme strands. So portfolio, remember that word, supports makers to use their craft skills and material knowledge and enrich their practices by diversifying into different areas. This is our Pinterest board of different projects that we've run on portfolio, and they take the form of a number of test cases of different ways that makers might interact with different sectors. So Craft Catalyst supported makers to work along teachers in formal education settings. Placemaking was a project at the Chatham Historic Dockyard in Rochester, and it was makers and architects from the Kent Architecture Centre working in collaboration, exchanging their kind of material knowledge. A series of 3 craft and tech digital residencies in the southwest, and that was a partnership with Watershed in Bristol and a number of southwest universities. And we're currently conducting some research and development with Keynes College and Guy's and St Thomas into makers working with healthcare professionals and what the sort of knowledge exchange could be there. And I mentioned briefly our injection programme. My colleague Tracy Clark runs the injection programme for established businesses. She liked my new term for it. I've started calling it Hothouse's Big Sister. So it's kind of it's kind of a similar format in many respects, but is targeted at mid-career and established craft businesses. And the aims of the scheme are encouraging economic growth in the sector, developing high-calibre sustainable businesses, cultivating a national network of role models and ambassadors again, and helping established makers grow. So that might be through taking on employees, it might be through accessing business finance, or it might be through starting to export or manufacture their work. And the image is a little bit small, I'm afraid, but that's our Pinterest board of some of our injection makers. So we've got people like Eleanor Pritchard, Yen Dung, Catherine Tuff, Michael Rue, Linda Bloomfield, so some very well-established businesses there that we've been working with over the last year. And finally, the umbrella to all of that is our collective event strands. So we run both alumni events, which is open to past participants of our selected schemes, allowing them to keep in touch and network with each other. And then also taster day events, which we've run with UCA in the past. And those are open to all and targeted at different points in career or ways of working. So you can sign up to our mailing list via the Crafts Council website, or you can contact us at makerdev@craftscouncil.org.uk. So with a maker development team, so it's makerdev@craftscouncil.org.uk. And you can also keep in touch, obviously, through Crafts Magazine and through Twitter and Facebook, which has got lots of content and lots of really interesting sort of networking opportunities in terms of who follows who and who's doing what within the sector. So endlessly fascinating. So thank you all very much for listening, and that's me.